So in this video we will answer the question, what are the benefits of going naturally aspirated or going turbocharged, and what should you do? First of all, to answer the end of the question, what should you do, it depends on what you want, and I will illustrate what are the benefits of both sides so you can decide for your own. Okay, naturally aspirated is an engine that is sucking in the air, so it's not forced with a turbocharger or supercharger as a forced induction system. A naturally aspirated engine is the simplest engine, so normally you get a more reliable engine to begin with, also less heat soak, because the turbo suffers more from hot air, etc. Those are great benefits. However, there are also other things to consider. A naturally aspirated engine has normally a more revvy nature, especially if you have two engines, one turbocharged and one naturally aspirated, that produce the same horsepower. The naturally aspirated engine will rev to the stratosphere, so to say. So it needs to be very high revving, which also is a nice feature. It gives you a really racy feel and also a more racy sound. And this is especially so because also the turbo acts as a sort of a muffler, because the exhaust gases recirculate through the turbo, which also dampens their sound production, of course. So that's something to consider. And another thing to consider is naturally aspirated engine. As I mentioned, there's two engines, both for example 2 liters, and one is naturally aspirated and the other one is turbocharged, and they both produce 200 horsepower. The naturally aspirated engine will produce approximately 200 Newton meters of torque, whereas a turbocharged engine with the same horsepower will produce between 280 and 320 horsepower. No, 280 and 320 Newton meters of torque. So it's approximately double the 50% more torque with the same horsepower. So that's also something to consider. And torque can have benefits, of course, because it's the pulling power that gives you a sense of acceleration, and also the ability to pull things a lot heavier, so those are benefits. But torque comes also sometimes with some drawbacks. So for example, you will have more wear and tear on your tires normally, and also you will have normally torque steer, especially with a front engine, front wheel drive type of powertrain. And torque steer is that the torque is twisting the axis, because it's so much torque on your front train, so to say, your front wheels, and also in bends it will easier push you towards the outside of the bend, so more of a understeer type of situation. Of course, there are things to help counter this, like limited slip differentials and other clever solutions. But still, that's something that's just there, and those tricks you can also apply to a naturally aspirated engine. So quite some benefits. Also the sensation could be a lot better. I drove, almost all my cars were naturally aspirated, and I really love that sound. But now I'm driving an ABARTH and a Suzuki Swift Sport, and I'm not saying that those exhaust sounds are not as nice, only the nature is oftentimes a little bit less revvy, because they don't need stratospheric revs to reach their horsepower, because they also have a turbocharger. So now on to the turbocharged supercharged cars. The difference between supercharged and turbocharged is supercharged as a whine, and it is not propelled by the exhaust gases. It's just an additional belt, so it sips away power, and therefore also a little bit of fuel from the main engine to get the supercharger to force feed additional air into the engine, and therefore with additional air they can also produce additional power, because you need air and fuel to make power. So that being said, that's a very easy thing. It also does not have lag. It's also easy bolt-on the many naturally aspirated systems. But the drawback, you have additional fuel consumption, and oftentimes normally the peak RPM power is waning with a supercharged engine, whereas with a turbocharged engine you can also have at peak revs still very strong power band due to the turbocharger. And also the other benefit of the turbocharger is that it is propelled by the exhaust gases. So normally a turbocharged engine of the same size will be a lot more frugal, so consuming less fuel than a supercharged engine of the same size. The supercharger will give you a little bit more torque and horsepower in the lower rev range, and the turbocharger more in the top rev range, a little bit less in the lower rev range, because still the exhaust gases need to be propelled to certain speeds. But there are many new systems, also hybrid turbos or twin turbos or even electric turbochargers that help to cope with that. An electric turbocharger is propelled by an electric system instead of your exhaust gases. So that is like a little bit of a supercharger system, but can also help. Another thing to consider is that if you want to tune your car, turbocharging is the best, even better than supercharging. And supercharging can also make a smaller pulley and therefore have more power of the supercharger to suck in air and then blow it into your engine. So that's the thing that you can easily do. That's very cheap. But with the turbocharger, with the ECU, you can program also the turbo pressure, and that turbo pressure, if that increases, you get even more air force into the engine, so therefore also producing a lot more power. So it's not only that you have the engine characteristic that you can tune, but also the turbo characteristics, which makes it a very good deal. So why did I went from naturally aspirated engines for about this year, I had my first own turbocharged engines. Last year the first, the Swift. This year the second, the ABARTH. So in 2021 the first, and I started driving when I was 18. So that's 2007 to 2021 without a turbo. Because regulations, they are just completely ruining it in the Netherlands if you have a little bit more CO2 that your engine puts out when you travel, or at least theoretically, but because in practice sometimes a naturally aspirated engine can produce less CO2. And I also wanted to have the gains of once you try to adjust something in a turbocharged car, you have the amplification effect a lot more. So those are the main reasons. If I would not go for this turbocharged car, especially the Swift, I would have gone for the Mazda, because even Honda is now moving towards turbocharged cars. And in the past I really like the Honda cars because they have that stratospheric revving system. Dock VTEC, I really love that, and then after a while they even made eVTEC, intelligent VTEC, also in the Civic Type R. But that's the reason why. And if not, I would go to Mazda, because Mazda still produces naturally aspirated engines quite a lot, and they also have some tricks on their own sleeve to decrease CO2, so therefore also additional taxes in the Netherlands. And they have quite big naturally aspirated engines in their cars, which I like. So that's it. Hope you like this short video. Found my car out. Me with my turbocharged car, the Suzuki Swift Sport Hybrid, and the ABARTH. And I must say that it was 1997 that I started driving these cars, not 2007. So not these cars, but I started to drive my own cars. And that makes it quite a while, because then it is 24 years without turbocharged cars of my own. Hope you liked this video. Have a great day. Bye bye. This video I will show you side by side the ABARTH 595 Turismo and the Suzuki Swift Sport Hybrid. So the size view of the Suzuki Swift Sport Hybrid is there. Same I can give you a little bit harder for the ABARTH. Rear quarters. So as you can see, actually this is a B segment car, that's an A segment car. So it's different in size. Also the back silhouette. Most people don't understand, but these Suzuki Sports are quite wide, especially at the bottom, as you can see, which gives it a very nice broad stance and also helps with handling. And these ABARTHs are also quite wide, but not as wide as the Suzuki Swift Sports. Also both have 4 exhaust pipes. This is a Record Monza system. Or this not have 4 but 2 exhaust pipes, sorry. This is an AKS system, which you can see down there. So it's just similar as a normal system, only this is a lighter and more performance tuned exhaust. Hope you liked this short video. Have a great day. In this video I want to give you a first person view of driving the ABARTH 595, and this is the Turismo version, as you can see. It's also an automatic, so you flip the key open the door, and you hear a robotic sound. It always does that. And you're welcomed with an ABARTH sign. I will show you a little bit more once I start the engine. Again, you get an ABARTH welcome in the TomTom, which is a blue and meat system. The other car is the Suzuki Swift Sport ZC33S. And also want to give you a view of the interior. Very nice one-piece chairs like the Suzuki also has, but these are leather, and 2 seats in the back as well. So then it's not a start button, but you just put the key in, ignition, feet on the brake, and normally, yeah, there you go. So as your instrument cluster, it also changes once you hit the sport button. The sport button is sitting there, so I will press it and watch it change. So now it's more sporty. The exhaust system is a Record Monza, which you now hear. Put on my safety belt, and you can of course open the roof, which I would always recommend when it's warm enough. You just press the button until it stops, then you press it again, and you get the full experience. Then down with the handbrake and into reverse. There you go. Into the sunlight. This really gives you that holiday view. So even a small trip, like I'm doing now. So it secures, as you heard, it secures the doors automatically. So it's just an anti-car jack feature. Swift does not have that. Audi A1 of my wife did, and now she has a BMW which also does have that feature. So it's more of a European thing, because also this is an Italian car. So for upshifts, can just use the automatic to do it for you, or you can do it manually with these flippers that are at the steering column. So on the left you have the downshift, and on the right you have the upshift as I just performed. Downshifting. You can also press the sport button again, and then you're in normal mode, which will yeah, just make the engine a little bit more docile. So a smoother ride, so to say. Also a lot less power, of course. Because once in sport mode, it's not only the reaction to the gas pedal, it's also the turbo pressure maximum that is increased. So that will force more air into the engine, and thereby also increasing performance, of course. Because fuel and air, that mixture will make the engine work harder or less hard, depending on what you have. It gives you performance. What I really like about this car is that it's, as I mentioned, it gives you the holiday feeling. It's not only the sunroof, but you also sit on a leather chair, which I also find adding to the premium experience. Another thing that really helps is that you have a very nice sounding car. Also you have a very nice steering wheel, you have an oversized handbrake. Everything is a little bit oversized for a small car. That's nice. So in my opinion, if you would compare this with more an executive type of car, I would compare this with to be a baby Maserati, because this being a Turismo, or a baby Lamborghini, as Clarkson told us it behaves like, because it feels angry and yeah, just mischievous. And I will tell you one thing: if you have a Lamborghini, you will baby it perhaps into the city, and also maybe outside of that, because it will cost you an enormous amount of money to replace. Also, you will be very careful where to park it. But it's ABARTH, of course, similar things could happen to it, but it's a different story, yeah, because the car is so much cheaper to begin with. So it gives you many of the advantages of exotic type of car, but less of the drawbacks. If you have to drive for enormous amount of additional distance to get your car safe, or you have a car that's as small as this one, it gives you parking space. Or for example, if you want to take friends, you don't have to drive the distance 2 times, because you have 2 people that you can also sit in the back. You have many benefits as compared to a Lamborghini. Maserati, and that's why I mentioned it before, of course has all these characteristics in itself, because it's also a 4-seater. For example, the Gran Turismo or the Ghibli, I think, were 4-seaters. Maybe the Ghibli is even a 5-seater like the Quattroporta is in some incarnations. I thought there were also Quattroportas with 4-seat, but maybe I'm mistaken. Just correct me at that point. And you also have an interior that is stylized. Of course, it's a lot less stylized than, for example, Maserati or Lamborghini, but you get that special feeling. Also that you have an open environment that you're sitting in. And of course it's not a true convertible, because then also these pillars should move away. But that also brings you benefits. One is the additional costs are not that enormous. 2, you have this rigidity, safety feature. And 3, you also have this, in case of an accident, of course, safety, but also the safety will make the chassis a lot more stiff, which improves handling. And you have, even with the roof closed, enough room to seat for adults or semi-adults. Yeah, of course, if you're very long, I'm 1.88 m, and when I'm sitting in the back, especially behind me, I'm not having a pleasant time so much. So why is that? Because the leg room is still cramped. Nice tunnel. But also the headroom, I'm having my head touching the ceiling, which is not a good thing. But yeah, of course, for example, if you have your wife and your wife's a little bit smaller, or your daughter, my wife and daughter will not be as big as me, they will sit there quite comfortably. So because their legs are a little bit less lengthy, less long, they will have less drawback of the leg room. And also because they're not as tall, they don't come into contact with the roof, even in a closed configuration. But the benefit is, once you open it, even I could sit there very comfortably for my headroom, because you were just catching bugs. And because of its small size, as you can see, size you can park is easier than other cars that could be parked. So for example, there's a car already here, and because it's this small, I can still park behind it, which would not be that easy with your Lamborghini or even your Maserati. And why is that? Also Lamborghini and Maserati are a lot wider, so it will be harder to get them different locations. Not really feeling what is happening there. I think this is better. Well, that was it. I'll give you one blip of the throttle. That's it. Have a great day. So the ABARTH experience. Roof open. It's exhaust system, record Monza. 4 pipes. Click was the locking system. I just shifted it to 2 seconds. Which the manual flip is third now. Indicator sounds. Shifting back to second again. The left flipper. Turn again. Such a very nice sound. Luxury. So for example, all leather seats. And also the suspension is less harsh. In this generation it has the same engine as the Competizione, so 160 horsepower, also the first generation, the SS, 160 horsepower. So Competizione and Turismo had the same engine. So you get all the benefits of the performance. But in later iterations, they shifted to a different turbo for the Competizione, which meant that Turismo was 165 horsepower, and the Competizione had 180 horsepower. So that's a benefit when you have the Garrett turbocharger. The benefit of the EIE turbocharger that the Turismo has is that it spools up quicker, so you have less lag, and the mid-range is a little bit more punchy, whereas the Competizione has a more peak and power delivery. So that's in its essence the difference. The benefit for me, I think, especially when you have an open roof like this 595C, C stands for convertible, is that you don't need a very harsh ride, in my opinion, and also the additional horsepower are not that much needed. So if you want to, you can give it also the Turismo tune that you have similar power as compared to the standard Competizione, and with additional Newton meter, and the torque gives you that luxury feel of a giant taking you and catapulting you towards towards everything that's lying in front of you. But I do like that this one has the exhaust system of the Competizione, an option, the Competizione record montage system. So especially when the roof is open, you will enjoy that burbles a lot more, in my opinion. So now sitting in front of a light, so I now switch to the sport, but just did. So now the car feels a little bit more sporty, even when it shifts for itself. But also you can shift, of course, manually, which is a great pleasure. Truck would go before me, so it gives you a little bit more of exhaust manifesting. But now we'll leave some room between us, and I'll give you some now in seconds, so I'll give you a little bit of the ABARTH experience. First, second. This I really like, and of course you can also press the button again, and then the sport mode deactivates. So when the sport mode deactivates, the pressure of the turbo is decreased again. And you will find that also the fuel management is a little bit less aggressive, which is a benefit, of course, if you want to save some fuel. But once you want to be a little bit more mischievous, as I did demonstrate, you can always one push of a button away and you get additional power. Even without the sport button engaged, the performance is quite decent, if not very decent. Such a small car, but with the turbo pressure increased and also the shifting moments delayed, of course it's a different experience once you get the sport button. Hope this small video gave you the insights that you like, and I wish you all a very great weekend, lots of fun. So nice. Bye bye. Founder in car, out. The birds playing the song, and this little birdie will also play a song, or a song. 595 Turismo. Look at all these details. not saying that it's superbly fancy, but it will give you a very nice, atmosphere. Also safe, airbags, also airbags on these sides. That's the benefit, that you keep this part, and you even have hooks for your clothes. That's a nice thing. Nice touch, I must say. Hey little birdie. Let's go for a ride. That's a little bit of a gymnastic course. I also must say something. We have an MTA system here, so it's a robotized manual transmission. And it also has benefits. For example, you can put it in neutral and push it. Which normally, now I'm putting it in reverse, you cannot do with an automatic transmission. And there's the benefit of the convertible. It's nice sun. You also hear the record Monza exhaust burbling, even better with the roof open, of course. Which is nice too. So I just shifted with this shift lever to the second gear. It only has 5 gears, so like the regular ABARTH, only very recently they updated this to 6 speeds for the competition and the new turismo, if I'm not mistaken. But all the others get only 5 speeds. Funny thing, in my opinion. Of course, a little bit cheaper, but nowadays many cars are already in 6 speed, even when they are not that sporting, so to say. I think that's a funny thing. Now it's shifting to third. Now press the sport button and you get a little bit of more response on the throttle. Also go through a little tunnel here, very little tunnel, so it doesn't give you that much additional sensation, sorry for that. Now shifting back to first, I guess. So this manual transmission shifts in a non-discrete manner, so quite abruptly. When it shifts up, you feel the kick in the back. When it gets on the gas again, which is a nice experience, but also it doesn't feel fluid. So in general, you can say an ABARTH is a busy type of car. You got the suspension that's quite stiff, which gives you a little bit more busy feeling than necessary. But also these gear shifts, they are of course completely not subtle. And you have a very thick steering wheel, as I'm holding now. It also gives you specific, you feel really engaged and always busy and on the run. Whereas with a regular car, you could do almost the same speeds, especially if that's a sporty type of car like my Suzuki Swift Sport, and don't feel that much of sensations all the time. And then if you compare that to a VW Golf GTI, of course, then you feel even more relaxed, so to say. And I like that busy feeling, because it gives you a sensation of a sports car, in my opinion, more so than a car that's always in control and filtering out all those things that are happening. I really like it that you get some communication to the steering wheel, and yet you also feel adjustments that the car is making all the time. You have to go through a bend at a good speed. And the same with the exhaust, if you have an exhaust that you can hear like this one, it feels that the car is alive. So it's not only busy, it is moving, it's breathing, it's vibrating, it's talking to you. That's a nice thing that the ABARTH has. And I would always recommend to get the convertible, unless you use it for a tractor or something like that. And why is that? Because with the convertible you have all these additional benefits without any, or at least many, compromises, because you still have a good, safe construction around you. You also have still a trunk that you can use to store something in. You have 4 seats, which are great, and also the headspace not compromised with this C version, which I like a lot. And then you get all the additional sensations. Also the weight is maybe 15-20 kilograms in more than the hardtop, which I would really like. And if you go for the hardtop, I think you should also look very closely at other cars. And why is that? For example, there's an Alfa Romeo with the same engine, or similar engine, the Mito QV. We also know that there's a Quadrifoglio, and that's, yeah, perhaps even better. I think Alfa Romeo does a better job in interior design than Fiat does, and even ABARTH cannot change that, in my opinion. Could also be a little bit more roomy, and then you have perhaps even more benefits. If you really like the ABARTH, also the hardtop, of course you should go with ABARTH. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, or that you should have a different view after my suggestion, but I'm just saying that you could. Also, if you go for the hardtop, there are also ABARTH Puntos, which are also more roomy. And in my opinion, they are better. They have a more mature underpinnings. Of course, they don't feel that busy, but they are just marginally heavier, and they have a lot more room and class, so to say. Also, the Punto, the generation that they used for the ABARTH, was quite a stylish car to begin with. It had a little bit of Aston Martin-ish, Aston Martin-esque, Aston Martin-ish type of features, which I like a lot. So it's a more mature car, but still, there's always also something to be said to go with the ABARTH hardtop, because it's more busy, it's more compact. If you like the looks more, you should just knock yourself out and get one. Not a bad thing. I just drove past Suzuki Ignis Sport in yellow, which I also had 2 times, one in yellow and one in red. The last one was in yellow. Also a very nice car. Also a benefit. If you really want a car that's also quite narrow, the Mito and the Punto are a little bit wider as well. So it could also be a drawback if that's something that you don't like. Hope you like this small video. Founder and car out. What's the optimum engine size for a hot hatch junior sports car? According to Toyota, it was 1.8 liters. They used this in the Celica, the last Celica, Celica if you want to know, want to say it like that, and also in the last incarnation of the MR2. And they said, because if you have a relatively small engine, you can also keep the weight low, and with low weight you also have less need for brakes and stiffer suspension, so you can still manage it and still have a car that's very nice drivable. So according to Toyota, 1.8 liter is the optimum for hot hatch or a small coupe. And so they also use this in the hot hatch in the Corolla T-Sport, and Celica, so Corolla, Celica, and also in the MR2. I also had a 1.8 liter hot hatch Honda Civic, 1.8 VTI, 170 horsepower, brake horsepower standard. Was also a very nice engine size in my opinion. However, most engines are not naturally aspirated at the moment, and I think a 1.4 liter turbo might be your best bet. I now have this in the Suzuki Swift Sport Hybrid, and also in the regular Suzuki Swift Sport. The 1.4 turbo is the engine to go for, and that's the engine that you use in the ZC33S, so the current incarnation of the Suzuki Swift Sport. And you might say, yeah, that's just pure Suzuki thing, but Suzuki Swift Sport is very light. That's below 1000 kilograms, comfortably, even in the regular 1.4 turbo. And the hybrid system is already there, so that gives you quite some good insights. But also ABARTH is using them for centuries. Is too much to say, but in modern days, from the incarnation of 2007 that they started with the ABARTH 500, they used it. They also used it in the Punto ABARTH that they made, and they also use it in the Roadster, so the Spider, the 124 Spider of ABARTH, but also of Fiat. So it's quite a good size of engine that gives you the ability to keep it light, and also offers good horsepower and especially very good torque. If you look at ABARTH, they even use this engine in the Biposto, which has 190 horsepower standard, and starting from the lowest ABARTH with 135 horsepower. So it's a very nice engine to consider. And why would you not take a bigger engine? Of course, bigger is better, is often the saying, and a bigger engine will give you a lot more power. That's true. But also you need to, because of a big engine, you need bigger drive shafts, you need bigger contact patches, so your tires should be wider. You need bigger brakes because the car is both bulkier and you also have more speed potential. You need stiffer springs, you need a stiffer chassis oftentimes, and also oftentimes a bigger car because you also need cooling of the engine, etc, etc. So all these things will add to the weight, and weight is the enemy of a hot hatch or a small sports car. So that's the reason why you should consider the 1.8 engine. If you now look at the modern day Alpine that has a 1.8 turbo, it's also very functional, and it's quite a small power plant for, this is not a junior coupe or sports car, but more medium. And also Elise had a 1.8 naturally aspirated engine. I think they still had it till the end of the car. Hope you liked this short video. Have a great day. Founder in Car out. Hi, another Founder in Car, and in this video we will discuss other 1.4 turbo engines of hot hatch origin, because I'm now driving the ZC33S, which is a Suzuki Swift Sport Hybrid. So it has a 1.4 turbo liter and also has a mild hybrid, but we will focus on the 1.4 turbo. So you know, my other car is an ABARTH 595, a Turismo with 160 horsepower, is also 1.4 turbo. They also have 135, 140, 145, 180 and sometimes even 190 or more horsepower, all from this 1.4 turbo engine. of the Fiat group, which is also used in the ABARTH Punto, and they also used it. It's also a nice hot hatch, and they also used it in the Mito Quadraverde, QV at least. Quadrifoglio, I thought. I think it's the same. But that's the most sportive version of the Alfa Romeo Mito, which is also in the Fiat concern, of course. But also in the past they had a 1.4 turbo Punto GT, which was then successed by the Punto AGT, which was a 1.8 liter naturally aspirated engine. Also other brands, for example Renault had Renault 5 GT Turbo, which also had a 1.4 liter turbo engine, but was in the mid region, and also had how to say this, a rear wheel drive. So that's a nice thing to consider if you want something else. The benefit of that layout, of course, that you have the rear tires being propelled, so it gives you a little bit different feeling. On the downside, however, you must understand that you will also lose a lot of cargo space, because they had the engine in the mid. Next to that, there are also other 1.4 liter fast versions. Might not be as fast as the ones that I just mentioned, but in the past the 1.4 turbo was also, for example, used in the Polo and the Ibiza, the Polo GTI. Then they had a 1.4 liter turbo, which was also supercharged, and also in the Ibiza they used this. There are some troubles with this engine, so they quickly stopped it again and then shifted to a 1.8 turbo TFSI engine, but you still can find them. I think they even used that 1.4 turbo engine in the, I think it was the Volkswagen Golf GTE, and even the current versions of the plug-in hybrid, for example even the Cupra Leon plug-in hybrid, use that 1.4 turbo engine, but then they have a big electric engine helping it. And the question is this really voltage? Because they are becoming heavier and heavier, as you can imagine. Hope this short video gives you some insight, and you will enjoy your 1.4 turbo power plant in your own hot hatch. Have a great day. If I missed out some 1.4 turbo engine hot hatches, please let me know. Of course, I know there must be a lot more, but I cannot get them from my top of the mind at this moment. Have a great day.